Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming to this talk. I really appreciate it. I know it's the last one before you're going to be eating some more, so I really appreciate you taking the time and doing it. One thing is, if you look at your little booklets, it says I'm the VP at Monzo for product, and I'm not. So if you came for a whole bunch of fintech stuff, that's not me, but thanks for coming. I guess maybe it's part of like false humility thing, like just having, I'm not actually the VP. Okay, so I did start off as a PM and became a head of product for a $500 million turnover product. And as Adam said, moved other products from launch and ideation to $50 million turnover in 9 months. And that's really nice. But one of my favorite or most painful experiences is creating for CBeebies, which is for small children and really young children, say 3 to 5, creating some games for them and seeing them cry and kind of pull tablets out of each other's hands. And, you know, it's that kind of emotional manipulation that you don't normally get when you're doing customer development. But if you guys ever really want to see if you've got strength as a product manager, try and create some apps for kids who are 3 and start crying. So by now, I focus all my time on coaching companies. I've now coached dozens of companies around the world, and also host a mastermind series for product leaders, and have my own podcast, as so many people do nowadays, called The Product Coach. But today I want to talk about our products and a product scorecard. And before I get there, I want to talk about who we are. So you've heard a little bit about who I am, but you know, product is great. I love doing product. I love product people. I'm incredibly passionate about it. And I'm incredibly passionate about helping them. And, you know, we learn so much as product managers. We get amazing skills that we build up, whether it's putting together a vision, building out roadmaps, prioritization. We've also got great tools for that, right? We've got Jira, ProdPad, ProdPlan, AirFocus, Jira, the list goes on. There are so many tools for our products. And I think we're just really blessed to be doing what we're doing. It's a great thing we do. It's a great job. We work with some great people, and we do develop some great skills along the way. And I don't know if you've ever accomplished this or come across this, where people tell you product is really easy. I mean, how hard can it be, right? You come up with a roadmap, a wish list, you come up with a bunch of tasks, you give it to your dev team, they do it, you present it, and life is good, right? And I think a lot of the times that is the perception of product. It's surely all you do is tell tech what to do and they do it, right? Right? Okay, maybe not. So it's hard. And when I coach and we put together a product scorecard, it's talking about taking the skills that we've learned as product managers and applying it to our team. It's not a product scorecard for your product. It's specifically a product scorecard for your team, just to be specific. So we're trying to apply a whole bunch of our skills to that. So a lot of the time I also get approached by people asking how they can keep up to speed, or you know, they want to share with the CEO how they're doing. And a lot of the thing that is missing is the how am I doing? You know, there's that classic, let's say, user story, if I was doing that for a product, of how are we doing? Someone on the leadership team going, how's product doing? And it's like, well, we're doing great. We did this feature, we did this feature. And really what they want to know is, how's product as a function working? And a lot of the time we don't have tools for that. We've got Jira, Confluence, all the usual suspects are named, but we don't really have that as a function to be able to go back to our leadership and communicate to that. And I think that's something that's really, really missing. So, you know, people are social creatures. It's a great way to get more involved having a product scorecard. It's also a great way to have more involvement from leadership and other parts of your team. It's a great way also to have more interaction and a way of discussing things. I'll get more into that a little bit later. So I created a product team scorecard and saw the results. So the 3 biggest results that people have responded to me that they've really appreciated from there are increased morale, focus, and motivation. And it's really interesting also seeing, let's say, junior, senior, at the VP levels, people talking about, okay, great, you know, on our scorecard, and I'll explain what these numbers mean a little bit later, but, you know, we're now at 300 out of 600, But in the last quarter, we've now gone to 350, and I can see the progress and getting that on board. And it seems really logical, right? If you think about your products, like, if you can measure it, you can manage it, but what are we doing with our team? And that's also it also becomes really relevant if you're just a team of one. If you're just a product manager and you don't have a product team, you don't, I don't know, BAs, POs, it's just you. I get often asked, how best to communicate what product does, especially by, let's say, one person who's kind of like, hey, I'm doing product, I think I'm doing really good, I don't know how good I'm really doing, but I report, let's say you're a startup, I'm reporting into the CEO. The CEO thinks we're doing good, but he's really just judging product, if you will, by the features that we're shipping. And I'm not poo-pooing features shipping and actually shipping stuff, but I think there is a better way to do that when it comes to your team. And by the team, I'm not just talking about having to be in product, it's whoever your stakeholders are. Okay, so let's talk about our framework for this. So I'm a product guy, I love frameworks, and a framework could look, for example, people always reach out to me sometimes and ask how their peers are doing, possibly because they don't know what good looks like. And this, again, comes into places where there's smaller teams or people who are new to product and aren't quite sure how various things can work. They need a way of actually measuring that and pulling that together, especially in smaller companies where they don't have mentors. But I've seen it work equally well in really large companies that I've coached, where I've coached product people to really get into it and actually start trying to take cognizance of what they're doing. The other thing, though, where I think it's really, really useful is a lot of management and leadership don't necessarily come from product, and they're not entirely sure how to measure that. So I've worked and coached with people who come from product, they've been in product for a number of years, but now they've got a manager, they've got someone in the leadership team who has to manage them, and they've never been in product before. And that's also another way where product scorecard can become really, really useful. Okay, I also want to talk very, very briefly about what this isn't. And what this isn't the characteristics you need as a product leader. I'm not talking about things like saying, hey, in your product scorecard, you need to make sure that you've got things like empathy and confidence and the ability to talk to stakeholders and talk different languages and talk to tech one way and talk to the business another way. I'm going to just assume for the sake of this talk that that's really part of your hiring process, right? In other words, we already have people with empathy. We have people with the right characteristics. Let's assume that either we have them on our team or that's us on our team. And again, I really love Paul's talk and talking about humility. So let's just assume we have a bit of humility, but we also have those characteristics, I guess. Okay, so the soft skills are really, really important in putting together a product scorecard. And I'm just going to assume for the sake of this talk that you have them. So it's going to be I want to talk a little bit about leadership principles. And I want to talk about reinforcing leadership principles that I think are so important. And I think this really does make the scorecard work. To me, when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about direct reports. It's not about dotted lines. I've had loads of those. You guys have seen that. It's about taking ownership. And it's saying, you've got this. And I know, again, just coming straight after Thor has been great because a lot of what he spoke about was really relevant. But the best example I always say is, like, if you love the app, great, let's go tell the team. If you really don't like the app, come and tell me. And I think if we apply that to yourself as an actual product leader or as a team, it's like, if you like what product are doing, if you feel product are responsive, if you feel product are actually getting back to you and understanding and have got the empathy and are reaching out and are truly collaborating with you, that's great. Then tell all of product. If someone in product, or let's say you're the head of product and other people feel that isn't there, you need that feedback. You need to be able to get that and to be able to really strongly communicate that to people. Which means to me, again, being really good at communication. Again, I'm talking a little bit about the soft skills. I'm talking about saying what it is you're going to say, saying it, and then asking people, do they know what you said? I'm going to talk a little bit in a couple of minutes about feedback and how to get feedback and how to develop this. But it's one of the absolutely critical leadership skills that we have. I think we all know that, we all practice it. But, are we getting better at it? And how do we know if we're getting better at it or not? Okay, so let's say we buy into leadership. There are three things that we really need to do here. And we buy into it, we've taken ownership if we haven't already, we've got our humble helmets on, if Thor doesn't mind me saying that. And most of the time, people we report to also haven't been product leaders. Or if they have, they haven't built up a way of actually measuring and managing that team to a specific kind of product, a methodology, or a framework. Here's an example, just to give you an idea. So in your scorecard, you can see on the right there, it's just one of the things I go through. It's called giving direction. And really, this isn't, you guys don't need to worry about whether it's right or wrong. And if you want me to share it with you, I'm happy to do that afterwards. But really all it is doing a stock take of absolutely everything that you do in product. And I've got a PDF that goes into 6 or 7 pages on this, where it's trying to measure everything and giving everything a score. So it's telling us, are we doing great? Are we doing badly? And probably more importantly, how do we know that? Can we give it a number? Even if that number is totally qualitative and it's an intuitive feel, at least it gives us something to work with. So the product scorecard, the reason it has numbers is, again, if we can measure it, we can manage it. One of the challenges that I get when trying to describe it to people is they say to me, well, we might give ourselves an 8 out of 20, but how do we know it's not actually a 15 out of 20? And a lot of that goes into the feedback and getting feedback and asking for feedback, which is I think one of the hardest things to do. So step 1, to get the product scorecard, I'm just going to go through with you a couple of quick steps of how we get there. Really, step 1, it's just doing a stock take. It's just trying to work out, can we go through all the aspects of product as we see them? Now, for some people, you might say things like, I don't know, presenting to business development is absolutely not relevant to you, in which case, you don't have to do that. But there will be things, that are pretty universal, prioritization, visions, roadmaps, that you need to go through that and actually find out how good do you actually think you are. Then write it all down. Right now, this is just a list, and that's cool. So step 1 is you get your list. It's just like kind of doing, let's say, brainstorming. You're brainstorming a list, you're breaking it down, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to communicate this. And let's give ourselves, let's think about something. Let's take prioritization. Prioritization is something that, and most of the people I coach, they struggle with. They struggle with how are we going to communicate, or how do we find a prioritization framework that's going to work, how do we get everybody involved, etc. So therefore, it's something where I've worked. I'll usually start off, we'll give ourselves, let's say, a score out of 20. It might start off with a 5. And then the question is, how are we going to get to 20? What are the things that we need to do? For example, do we have a framework? Who are our stakeholders that we need to communicate that to? How are we going to put a system in place to actually get feedback from those stakeholders? So it becomes the same thing about the things that you feel that you need to work on. Okay, it is subjective, but we need the feedback. Okay, great. So step 1, we went and we did our brainstorming of every single thing that we need to add. Step 2, we started to actually write it down and start scoring ourselves and giving ourselves a score. It could be something like I showed you earlier, where it's something out of 20, it could be out of 5, 10. Either way, you need to find a way, even if you want to go on a traffic light system, are you red, are you orange, are you green, work that out. It doesn't have to be as complicated as a number, but it will give you something. The other thing, though, that has worked pretty well in the past around a numbering system is it ends up giving you a total. And it gives you a total that you can look at, say, every quarter or whatever the time frame that you look at these things, to be able to work out and see how you're improving. Okay, then step 3, share it. I must say, I think this is really the scary part. So when I was talking about leadership earlier, if a product scorecard was a product, we'd want to get really, really early feedback, right? We'd want to talk to our customers, talk to our users, and start getting feedback. So, we'd want to know number of users gained, lost, revenue, etc. And this is where I believe that when we start sharing a product scorecard with people outside of product, that we can really start improving. I still think it's really scary because there's a lot of people that can come back and say, look, we just think, and I've had this, I've worked with teams where people have come back and said, hey, we just don't think products are responsive enough. Like, we just don't know what you do. Going back to the previous example, where it's like, surely you just tell tech what to do and they do it and that's it. Like, what is it you guys actually do? And regardless of what you do, we don't think that you take our features, our precious little, wish list stuff that we want you to do. We don't take it seriously enough. And a lot of the time, I think that is just a failure of communication. So where I've seen people starting to share this and people starting to go back and say, okay, great, here's our scorecard. Let's involve business, BD, business development, whoever, and say, this is what we've done. This is where we think we're good. Let's try and share it. What do you think of us as products, as a unit? Something that I think really works well here are masterminds. So on LinkedIn, a lot of people reach out to me as well and ask me about masterminds. And in the ones that I've created, we share our scorecards. We share our scorecards amongst each other and to show each other our own progress or lack thereof, right? And that's been really powerful. There's a lot of people, that do reach out, and I don't know about you guys. I mean, I think product people I think are great, and I love collaborating with them. And it's really important for us to get inspiration and to collaboration with our peers. So if you can, one of the ways that, and let's assume that you buy into the fact that you need a scorecard and that it's going to be really useful to you, I'd highly recommend that one of the things you do is create a little mastermind, particularly outside of the company that you work in. If you've got 5 or 6 mates that work in product that you can collaborate with and talk about it and share your scorecards, I've really seen that work well. And some of the Zoom calls and video calls we've been on, where we're sharing the stuff, it becomes really, really helpful. And it's something that most people don't do. There's a lot of people that might have, let's say, an intuitive understanding that getting together with your peers and sharing what you're doing obviously makes a lot of sense. But there isn't always the understanding that there is a way that we can actually put something together that has metrics that we can discuss. And in a lot of the masterminds that I work with or that I collaborate with, we'll have someone on a hot seat and we'll have someone come and kind of talking about that. Let's say, just talk about prioritization, because that always comes up. People might talk about prioritization frameworks and say, okay, great. So here's the mastermind, here's where we are, this is where we're struggling, right? So we've gone from scorecard, this is where we aren't doing great. Hey guys, there's 5 or 6 of us. How can you help us out with prioritization? And I think we all know intuitively that even if it isn't prioritization, which I keep going on about now, there's always something that we can improve on. Okay, so, and how this really helps us improve is, again, prioritization could be something. It could be roadmaps that we think we're really good at. I've often thought that in the past, and I'll give you a really interesting example going forward how that actually wasn't the case. So it really helps us improve. One of the things that I always think of is, people work for a company and we love what we're doing, let's say for their company. But a lot of the time, the research shows that we feel allegiance for our team first. So it's kind of our team, our unit, and then the company. And I think this also really gives us a way to share with other people how our unit's going, and it really, really builds that out. The other thing is, it's not feature-based. We spend so much time just talking about features, and we want to, there's a big movement in trying to move, say, roadmaps away from being feature-based. And I think when it comes to a scorecard, you're talking about your team, and it gives you a way to kind of step back on that. Okay, secondly, what do we need? One big thing. So if we can imagine it, let's say, we've got our scorecard, we've decided that prioritization is the thing that we want to work on, and we want to work on it for the next quarter. Where I've seen this work really, really well is having a weekly one big thing to do that. And it came from a guy I used to work with, Seb Asplund, who's one of the best product people I've ever had the absolute honor of working with. Just an absolutely phenomenal guy. And together as a team, we'd get together and we'd say, okay, great. We've got our day-to-day, we've got our sprints, we've got everything that we're doing day-to-day, but let's just take a step back and just work on our one big thing to get something better. So going back to the prioritization example, we're going to be working on our one big thing. We would have gotten together as a team and let's say prioritization, Seb would say to me, Ross, what are you doing about that? And I'd say, hey, listen, this week, what I really want to do is choose a framework, and my actual action points around that to deliver that is to talk to Tim, who's got a great framework, and I've got a meeting set up this week. So the example I'm trying to give is the fact that it's like outside of your day-to-day. It's not just the same old, look, between 9 and 5, whatever your working hours are, that's what you do. It's trying to take something outside of it. So that's your one big thing, and it's incredibly, incredibly important. I don't know how many of you guys actually do something like that, or if you've had the ability to do that. I wish I could say I invented this, but Seb did, and I don't know where he got it from, but it works incredibly well with the people that I'm coaching. And it's really the stuff outside of your day-to-day. And the other thing that I've seen that works incredibly well is if you can get together with your team and go through this. And it could be as simple as just like a quick little Google Doc. It's like, hey, this is what Ross is going to work on next week. This is what Tim's working on for the next week. And then, again, look at it back in the next week and go, How did we do with our one big things? Did we accomplish them? Didn't we accomplish them? I've seen it in the past where it actually takes a bit of momentum. The first 2-3 weeks, we don't quite get to them because we haven't got the time, because we're really, really busy. But I've seen that once the momentum kicks in or the flywheel effect kicks in, it's incredibly, incredibly important. So if you could go back and still talking about prioritization, let's say, we look at it on a quarterly basis. We've got 12 one big things that we can look at, and then we can see how we're going to drive that forward. So that really, really works well. I mean, just like from a product perspective, it's, you could kind of argue it's kind of like your epic and your stories and stuff. But really what it is just trying to work something that you're working on, then just breaking it into chunks over a period of time. And then lastly, deliberate practice. And I'm going to be talking again a little bit more about this on the feedback section. But a lot of this, my understanding of this came from Anders Ericsson's book on deliberate practice. And it means if we practice and get feedback and coaching, we can really improve. And even the practice of having one big thing and reporting back, it's so important. So it's a good start. It takes a while to get going, and please don't give up. And the last thing we need is feedback. And I'm just going to finish off on this. So the way that I learned this and the way that I got into this was there was this amazing sales trainer called Phil. Got all the sales team together, got them to put all their their mobile phones in a box and their laptops. They couldn't look at any of them. And I gave the presentation on the product, and I thought it was really, really simple. We had a Google form afterwards, and I asked them for feedback, and I asked them pretty much comprehension-wise, how did they understand it? And the results were absolutely shocking. What I thought was incredibly simple came back, and it wasn't the case. And then with a lot of my coaching clients, I get them to do that and get the feedback, and it really shows them with the comprehension of the people aren't that. And that then informs the scorecard, so they can actually see where they really are. And I really think we need to do more of this as product people. So I really hope you'll give it a try. Those are the 3 things. You need your scorecard, you need your weekly one big thing, and loads of feedback. And the feedback part, to me, is where it all comes together, and it's also the most scary thing. I really hope you're going to give it a try. And as far as feedback goes, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, or if you want to just reach out, if you want to have a look at scorecards and talk about them. I love this stuff, as you can tell. And thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thank you.